From her tragic upbringing to the world of fashion to her culinary debut and beyond, here's everything you need to know about Lorraine Pascale and why you haven't seen her on Food Network lately. Lorraine Pascale was born on November 17, 1972, at the Hackney Mothers Hospital in London. Back then, she was Lorraine Victoria Brown, the daughter of unmarried Caribbean parents who had no intention of keeping her. At just 6 weeks old, Pascale was taken into foster care by Marion and John Bird, a young married couple living in Leytonstone, a region of East London. The Birds cared for Pascale for 6 months of her life until she was sent to live with her biological father. It would be a brief reunion. Pascale lived with her father for the next 6 months, but when Marion Bird paid a visit to Pascale's new home to see how she was doing, she was shaken by what she saw. Under her father's care, Pascale had become undernourished and unhappy. Her hair had fallen out, she had lost a significant amount of weight, and she cried inconsolably. Bird placed an emergency call to social services to report her observations. Shortly after, Pascale was removed from her father's home and returned to living with the Birds. She would remain with her foster parents until her adoption at 18 months old. At 18 months old, Pascale was adopted by Audrey and Roger Woodward. This was a heartbreaking moment for the Birds, who wanted to adopt Pascale themselves. Unfortunately, because they had been expecting a temporary child at the time, they'd only signed on as temporary caregivers. The Woodwards raised their new child in Oxfordshire, giving her the middle name Pascale because she was adopted on Easter. Her new living situation was ordinary to begin with, but everything changed when Audrey and Robert Woodward got divorced. After the split, 3-year-old Pascale and her older brother Jason, the Woodwards' biological child, lived with their mother full-time. Struggling to cope with the aftermath of divorce and life as a single parent, Audrey Woodward spiraled into alcoholism, and in 1981, Woodward herself contacted social services, insisting that the child be placed elsewhere for her own safety. As a result, Pascale was returned to foster care. She was placed with a highly religious family until she was 10, when she was permitted to live with her adoptive mother again.
I'm grateful for what I've been through. It just makes you very resilient, it makes you very appreciative.
Pascale was scouted at age 16 by Beth Bolt, the same agent who had plucked fellow model Naomi Campbell from obscurity in the mid-1980s. Before long, Pascale had become a bona fide 90s top model, regularly appearing in high-fashion editorials and strutting the runway for Chanel, Paco Rabanne, Calvin Klein, and more. Yet, while the early 90s aligned with the peak supermodel era, it was also a decade in which unchecked racism was common and accepted amongst the elite of the fashion world. At one point, Synchro, the agency with which Pascale was signed, shaved off her hair. Pascale hated the decision, but it did wonders for her career. She subsequently posed for the most renowned fashion photographers of the day. And while Pascale thinks the pictures are beautiful, she has also pointed out that the ethnic look was in demand then. As a black model, Pascale rode camels and elephants into photo shoots, and she was often decked out in African-inspired jewelry. Despite her many successes in the industry, she walked away at age 27. During her days as a model, Pascale rubbed shoulders with celebrities and socialites on a regular basis. Kaz Bielinski-Unigil was one such character. He was a jazz musician who was comfortable assuming the role of an unaffected bohemian, but in reality, he was a Polish count. Pascale and Bielinski-Unigil married in 1995 and welcomed daughter Ella Bielinska the following year, but the marriage was to be short-lived. In reflection, Pascale says that she married young in order to feel secure. After enduring a traumatic childhood and suffering through the high-stakes life of a supermodel, she longed to feel safe and grounded. Sadly, she and Bielinski-Unigil divorced in 2000 after a breakup so traumatic that it turned her hair prematurely gray. Pascale also said that her time with the Count motivated her to further examine the trust issues she brought into relationships. Having grown up surrounded by chaos, Pascale realized that she often created drama in otherwise peaceful situations.
I remember my therapist used to say to me, the thing is, Lorraine, when life is going calm and well for you, sometimes you just throw in a hand grenade.
The silver lining to all this? Following the divorce, Pascale and Bielinski-Unigil were able to co-parent their daughter amicably. Ella Bielinska, now in her late 20s, is an actor, and she's as close to her mother as ever. Adjusting to motherhood and ready to transition away from model life, Pascale centered her focus on her next chapter. After trying out a few different potential careers, she enrolled in veteran British culinarian Prue Leith's School of Food and Wine in 2005. She left having specialized in baking and gained work experience at both the Mandarin Oriental Hotel and London's Hummingbird Bakery.
Yeah, I just find it really nourishing and comforting, baking and eating.
Hoping to get her foot in the door of a notoriously harsh profession, one in which women and people of color regularly have to fight for a place at the table, Pascale contacted renowned chef and restaurateur Marco Pierre White. She and White had become acquainted during her modeling days, and White agreed to help her build her brand. Pascale made her food television debut in 2008 as a guest on White's Great British Feast, on which he introduced her as Countess Lorraine Pascale. The BBC became interested, and in January 2011, she launched her TV series Baking Made Easy. Not everyone was buying Pascale's latest venture, though. There were plenty of skeptics who suggested that she should stick to what she knew, modeling. But after everything Pascale had already overcome, she wasn't about to let others' negative judgment hold her back. Her charm and skill on Baking Made Easy won viewers over and led to further TV opportunities.
It really is that simple.
In 2013, speculation about Pascale's troubled love life hit headlines. Pascale had met music and film executive Jed Doherty at a dinner party in 2009, just as she was establishing a name for herself as a baker. They were together for years before getting engaged. When the engagement was called off, it was speculated that Pascale had ended the 4-year relationship. Neither Pascale nor Doherty spilled details about the broken engagement, but insiders claimed that when Doherty's career called him to Los Angeles, he invited Pascale to make the move to the US with him, and she said no. In the years that they were together, Pascale's turn as a media chef in the UK was steadily on the rise. A string of TV shows on the BBC and best-selling cookbooks had given her a lot of professional legitimacy and momentum, and she wasn't willing to give that up. Pascale and Doherty were both saddened as they went their separate ways, and Pascale later admitted that her trust issues had once again contributed to the relationship's end. She married businessman Dennis O'Brien in 2021. Speaking to Vogue about their wedding, Pascale simply said, "It was a perfect day." It isn't easy being famous in the age of social media, and sadly, Lorraine Pascale's increased visibility made her a target for cyberbullying. In 2016, Pascale guest hosted the BBC's Saturday Kitchen after longtime host James Martin stepped away. Scrolls of hateful tweets rolled in, criticizing Pascale's hosting and cooking abilities. Twitter trolls alleged that Pascale didn't know how to cook and talk at once, interrupted the show's guest, and had a dull on-screen presence. Pascale herself found it difficult to ignore this, and she tweeted quips back to several of her haters. She defended herself at the time, saying that she'd taken the high road with cyberbullying for too long and had simply had enough. And she wasn't exaggerating either. She had fielded hordes of online abuse over the years, much of which was racist and sexist in nature. In 2011, she was the subject of a tweet that included such a tirade of slurs that friends convinced her to show it to the police. Once authorities confirmed the tweet was sent from the US, however, no further action was taken. Pascale's relationship with adoptive mother Audrey Woodward has long been complicated. Despite their many ups and downs, Pascale was devastated when Woodward was diagnosed with dementia. The 2014 documentary, Fostering and Me with Lorraine Pascale, saw Pascale piecing together her experiences in the foster system. But Woodward, who was pivotal in that story, was too ill to participate. When the documentary was filmed, Woodward had already lost the ability to speak. She passed away in 2015. Pascale was floored by the loss and even suffered from depression in the aftermath. Pascale has since revealed that she was able to forgive the physical abuse Woodward inflicted on her as a child because her mother was struggling to cope and needed help. She credits Woodward for giving her a strong work ethic and for instilling her with the belief that she could achieve her dreams. In the mid-2010s, Pascale's culinary career began to gather steam across the pond. Food Network thought Pascale would be a great addition to its Baking Championship series, and she jumped at the opportunity. As a judge on Halloween Baking Championship alongside Carla Hall and Zach Young, Pascale brought a playful yet candid perspective to the competition. She was also a regular judge on Spring Baking Championship with Duff Goldman and Nancy Fuller, and on Worst Bakers in America.
Happy birthday!
Then, suddenly, Pascale ceased to appear on Food Network's roster. It was nothing personal. The culprit was COVID-19. Pascale rode out pandemic restrictions at home in the UK. Yet, when bans were finally lifted, she didn't return to the Food Network studios. Although she worked with Food Network for several years, it doesn't appear that she has plans to do so again in the near future. There's no doubt that Pascale has been through a lot, no matter how much she made of it, and she's certainly not immune to the residual emotional damage caused by her difficult past. She has often opened up about how the abuse and instability she faced in childhood has played a large role in the post-traumatic stress disorder she still grapples with today. It's a tough diagnosis, but in true form, Pascale refuses to let it defeat her. Pascale works through her PTSD with the help of therapy, transcendental meditation, and exercise. She is also embarking on a doctorate in psychology and holds public discussions where mental health and related subjects can be talked about openly and honestly. Pascale is also something of a life coach on social media, a huge believer in affirmations. She routinely shares the mantra she swears by in moments of weakness, anxiety, and self-doubt. Elsewhere, Pascale has said that helping people heal from traumas in their pasts is one of her greatest purposes in life.